Hey everyone, welcome to Linux for the Rest of Us, episode 251, being recorded on August 29th, Saturday evening. If you would like to partake in this live event, all you got to do is follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Discord, and we try to let everyone know when we do go live. We try to go live Saturday around 9:30 to 9:45, and this episode of Linux for the Rest of Us is brought to you by Bob from Grumpy Dog Consulting, who was a Patreon supporter, and all you have to do is support us once, and we Podnuts will thank you for the rest of our existence. So I want to definitely say thank you to Bob from Grumpy Dog Consulting, and saying thank you then ultimately leads me to say thank you to Bruce Patterson. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. In fact, I've been cleaning my house the last couple of days because, well, there's not very much else to do. However, I've got a treat for our fans. Hold on a sec. So, as you know, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson just bought the XFL along with his ex-wife, which is a curious thing to do. But anyway, so coming across one of my tubs today, I came across the original XFL banner. So let's see, we've got the Orlando Rage.
I stopped hearing you, Bruce.
I got the Orlando Rage right here.
Nice.
Got the original league banner.
Lost you again.
I had the Chicago Enforcers here. And then finally, the Birmingham Bolts.
Nice. Very nice.
So now if I can find some way of selling all of that stuff and making good money for it, we'll be good to go.
Well, and being a red-blooded American by that, me here, long-term American, I'll say this. Tangent. Joseph Biden's middle name is Robinette. There's many people with the last name Robinette in my family graveyard, thus cementing the fact that he's literally only like a third cousin away from me, which scares me. If Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson will not run for president, at least he'll purchase the XFL to give me something to support him with.
Oh, absolutely. And there was nothing wrong. Actually, I think the second iteration of it was getting it right because, they went and targeted more of the cities that wanted to see them. And, I think the next time around, they might actually nail it. Third time's a charm. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is people are getting tired with the I don't want to say political correctness, but the correctness in the NFL is becoming, to some people, like they have like a gastrointestinal disease and it's like coming back up through the wrong way kind of thing. While that is stated, there's no doubt that players in the NFL are among the best athletes that have ever existed. And if we can give them a alternate stage to show their talent, then I'm all game for it.
Well, also, I mean, let's face it, I don't know who does the PR for the NFL. They should have been fired years ago, but oh wait, that could be Roger Goodell. So anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, they can't get out of their own way, and neither can any of the owners. I mean, really, Dan Snyder, do you really need to twist your arm before you change the name of that crappy team in Washington?
I know, but here's the thing, Bruce. When they poll actual Native Americans, less than, I want to say 7% of them think it's an offensive name. Over 80% of them think it's good to have their name in the public conscious. So it's a question of, did he change the name because actual Native Americans thought it was offensive, or did he change the name because politically correct Karens who live in suburbs thought it was offensive?
Oh no, actually, a more powerful force got him to change. It was his sponsors like Nike and FedEx.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's too bad because it had nothing to do with, a right or wrong decision. It's like, we won't support you, so you're SOL. However, going on that note, and not to cause too much of a ripple here, but when the day is done, Land O'Lakes decided to take the Indian woman off of their product. Now, I argue that they should have kept it because I think what they were probably going for initially was, this butter is as pure as the land we work with. I don't think it had anything to do with misappropriating, a Native American woman on their product. And they should have pushed back. I mean, Trader Joe's, same thing. They pushed back and they said, listen, it's lighthearted. We're not racist, and it was meant to have fun. And I think people have forgotten how to do exactly that.
Well, it's one of those things. Time is a very important perspective on beliefs, ideals, and history. And I tried to explain this to my wife very unsuccessfully, that you cannot say the founders were racist because they had slaves. It's like jumping ahead 200 years and looking at yourself saying, you owned a gas guzzling car. You are obviously an anti-environmentalist. Everything in the universe is much more nuanced than that. You can support something yet take part in an activity that directly contradicts that, because I don't want to say convenience, because we're lazy human beings.
Well, I think one of the things, and I wish I could remember who said this, and they put it so eloquently, we need to stop looking backwards because we'll never progress forward if we continue. And that's true. I mean, this is complete armchair quarterbacking at its worst. Actually, one of my favorite writers, Baltimore's own H.L. Mencken, wrote a lot of books, and at the time, he was considered, one of the best reporters out there. However, he released his diaries 25 years after his death, and then he was labeled a racist. Now, again, we need to keep these things in context for the time that they were used in. Was it right? No, it wasn't. That's why we learn. We learn from those things and we progress. But again, you consider the time and the way things were. And I think people forget that. Again, learn from the past and educate yourself about the future and just go forward. I'm tired of where we are with things. But anyway, folks didn't come here to listen to us to this part, so I think we should move on.
Well, I'll say, because of you, I'm aware of H.L. Mencken, and I literally tried to watch like a 2-hour documentary about his life, and I was so confused. Obviously he was a smart fellow. Obviously he was an important fellow. Obviously he was a guy that challenged, and that's, to me, the role of a journalist in history, was to challenge the norms and to contrive. That's not the right word, but to like come to the essence of the issues in as quick as a possible format, while providing a good narrative around it. He was obviously an incredibly talented fellow, but I have a really, I'm going to have to watch more about him to really understand his actual impact and everything.
Well, the short of it is that there was a book he wrote about the 1920 elections, and it was called Carnival of Bunkum. And if you read that based around the elections of the time, you could it's still appropriate for even today. It's a circus, and you're the people running for president are your clowns in this circus, and not much has changed, if anything, other than the fact that I think the nation is probably the most divided it has ever been, even in the short amount of time that I've seen. Nobody wants to talk or work together ever.
Well, I'll say, listening to podcasts like The Pessimist Archived, what you find is we've always been incredibly divided. And I hate to say it like this, the most expressive proof of that is if you just look at the Star Trek episode where you have the characters who were down the middle, one side white, the other side black, and they didn't like people who were on one side black, the other side white. We as Americans try to find any excuse to be polarized, to be opinionated, to be against another team. We are a tribal being. We need someone to say is evil. I will say, if you take a look at the actual election history here, you will find that we have been incredibly unethical. What we're doing today is actually remarkably tame. It really is compared to how it was in the past. But that doesn't mean here in 2020 everything is sane, everything is perfect. But FUD exists. FUD, honestly, I want to say it was maybe episode 5 of this show where I brought the term FUD into existence because it is a real, true thing that everyone has to be aware of. Now, FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The fear doesn't necessarily mean it's fake. The uncertainty doesn't mean it's unnecessarily fake. And the doubt doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But when you understand the fact that people push FUD onto areas for the fact of trying to get clicks, trying to get headlines, trying to get attention, trying to get propaganda to push through, then you are better able to identify when FUD happens. Stephen J. Von Nichols, who maybe is one of my most respected people in the Linux journalist world, because I don't respect too many of them, did publish an article there on ZDNet, because that's his, place of choice, basically talking about he was sick and tired, enough with the Linux security FUD, and he basically cut through a lot of propaganda. And in my humble opinion, he basically hit the nail on the head.
Oh, and I completely agree. Although, every time I keep seeing the term boot hole, that's not what translates in my mind. But yeah, I think an article like this was necessary because in the last couple of weeks, CNET has been the source of irresponsible journalism in some ways because, in highlighting some of the issues around Linux security, they make it seem like it's one of the most unsafe platforms out there. And let's face it, that's not true. I mean, I think a couple of things we have to look at, and we've had this discussion in the past. Across all of it, I believe the SANS Institute had done a yearly report on these kind of things. Now, all OSs across the board see about the same amount of attacks a month. And the thing is that what separates Linux from the other two, and I'm talking about Mac and Windows, is the fact that once something is posted as being insecure, I would say that loop is usually closed, if not within the day, certainly within the week. Because the thing is that that's the benefit of open source, in my opinion. That's why I enjoy this stuff. If I know something is out there and insecure, I know how to address it. And more importantly, I know that it will be addressed. Unlike Windows, last time I looked, I think it was 470 0 days in their OS as of right now. So anyway, good for Stephen J. Von Nichols.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the whole thing. What he said in the article to me was one of the utter unbelievable truths that a lot of people, to be honest, I don't think have the brain capacity to understand. And that is, yes, there are issues in Linux, but no, the issues are not in Linux. It's the incompetence of administrators who administrate Linux that are the issue. Now, the devil's advocate is there is a huge amount of issues that are happening in Windows right now that are not Windows issues. They are, in fact, issues with Windows administration. But taking that aside, then you take a step back and say, well, what are the differentiators? Here's a perfect example. Windows just patched this month in August a exploit that was reported to them 2 years ago that allowed RDP access bypass to a command shell, which meant, I'm going to have to guess, certain 3-letter governmental organizations said to them, you cannot patch this because we are currently utilizing this for our own means, for our own purposes. Microsoft is easily 10 times more insecure than anything else that has ever existed, which is weird because they're positioning themselves to be a security focused company. It's almost like, I'm the town butcher, but I'm promoting veganism. It's like unbelievably hard for me to comprehend.
Well, interestingly enough, what does the FBI not do anymore? Whenever they secure an iPhone, they don't need to go to Apple anymore for the codes to break in because they've found a company that knows how to do that, which means they have something that Apple doesn't realize.
Well, I don't know if I would say they don't realize, but they don't admit is the best way I could put it. And look, I'm not saying anybody is completely innocent in any of these things that we talk about. The way that I put it is everybody from Huawei to Xiaomi to Microsoft to Facebook to Twitter, they're all guilty. I will say it like this. They're all guilty in different ways. The only thing I think to be even remotely close to being honest and pure is something that is completely transparent. Transparency is the pathway to security, the pathway to honesty, the pathway to being completely open. And the only thing I know that is completely transparent is the Linux operating system.
Exactly. Of course, like anything else, when you consider when the day is done, when you put a fresh OS down on your machine, it's not going to those non-work related websites.
Yeah, and I will say I understand people who are more enterprise focused who feel like they have to rely on third-party vendors and closed source things to get their job done. But every single day, I keep seeing code being relinquished to a completely open source nature that I didn't think was even possible to being open sourced 2-3 months ago or 5 or 10 years ago. So I think it's inevitable. And I think every company worth its weight in salt understands they're all going to have to be in the open ecosystem. They're all trying to figure out how they can be completely open, yet marginalize everyone else and completely control their channel of software and development and services and ecosystems.
Now, one of the things I was hoping we could segue into is Firefox, or actually more accurately, Mozilla and VPN, because that's actually a story I've been very interested in and almost at the point where I'm willing to pull the trigger on it. Although to this point, there's still no VPN client for it, which is interesting because I think the question I was going to ask you was, is it really necessary that they provide a client? I mean, I would think that you could use something like OpenVPN. Is that not true?
I'll just say it like this. I don't completely know what they're thinking, what they're doing, what their end goal is, but on Windows and Mac and Android and iOS, you can run the Mozilla VPN and it works fine. And now here's the weird thing, Bruce. I've been running it now 24/7 for 2 months. And certain things, whether on mobile data or on Wi-Fi, are ridiculously quicker. Some things are just as slow as they ever were. And I don't understand either one, why it happens. Right now, if you go on GHacks, you can use the Mozilla VPN on Linux and Mac OS devices right now. But it literally requires you to install Wine on your Linux operating system, which I think is absolutely button ought to be like Christmas Story, Red Ryder BB gun level of craziness.
I love wine in the fact that you could take it either way. I usually prefer to use the WHINE wine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy Wine exists. Wine serves a purpose. I've actually bought Crossover Office in the past, and I look forward to giving them money again in the future, but I really wish they didn't need to exist.
Well, here's where I give, what do we call that? Religious, a confession. So, as you know, I am the only user of Opera. And Opera actually has a feature where you're automatically on VPN. And, I've never really considered that before, but I absolutely need to look a little further in because I don't know what's behind their VPN whatsoever.
Well, I'll encourage you to not do a trace route on your connection, because what you will see is every single bit of information that you have is literally going through the how do they say it? The DNC? No. The RCN, the Republic of China. Oh God. You're going through China. I hate to say it, but you are.
Wait, how do you know that?
Because I've literally signed up for the Opera VPN, and I actually did the VPN, and I actually ran the commands that did trace routes. And I was shocked that every bit of data I was sending through the VPN was going through China.
Oh, holy cow. Wow. Wow. All right. Well, I guess maybe we're just going to leave this one on the side of the road.
Well, and there's another link that I literally found super late, Bruce. So it's not in the links I sent to you, but it was a list of network commands. It was from Red Hat. And I will say this, I have unbelievably mixed feelings about Red Hat because they're successful at what they do. I know more than a couple of people that work for them. They are unbelievably nice people. I want them to succeed just to make sure that competition is real. But they're a corporation who's profit focused. So I have very mixed feelings about them. But I do believe they had the best of intentions, not just for you, not just for me, but for everybody involved with their stuff. They did post an article on official redhat.com, 5 Linux network troubleshooting commands. Now, they're good troubleshooting commands, but they're also good commands that you can use just to understand what is going on network speaking. Now, quick disclaimer. I am completely incompetent when it comes to network knowledge. There's the like 6 layers or 7 layers of network, blah, 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 blah. I don't understand like one of those layers. So when I talk to somebody who's smarter than me, when it comes to networking and Linux or anything, they're always like completely understanding that they know more than me. These commands are the kind of commands that if you do run, then you'll be able to at least get some insight into your local network activity and then your greater network visibility is the way I'll put it.
Now, that's actually a weakness of mine too, unfortunately. Whenever we discuss anything around security, at some point I'm going to have to get up to speed on that because even for security A+ exams, that's actually a requirement that you know that. So, yeah, unfortunately, I'm speaking from a point of weakness. What's new?
Well, no. See, at least you don't suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, Bruce. And the Dunning-Kruger effect is a very well documented cognitive bias of, like 1% of a topic, yet you think you understand 90% of the topic. You at least know enough that you don't know, which is a very respectable thing. I'll just put it like this. Networking is almost like radar. Okay. The people who actually are the experts in radar can never tell you how it works. They just know that it does. The experts I know in networking cannot communicate to a small minded fellow like myself how stuff works. They just tell me to run commands, look at the output, digest the output, and then run these other commands to understand what is going on. All we have to know is in a lot of networking basics 101, security is an afterthought. Number one. Number two, DNS is maybe the most important thing in the world when it pertains to capital F freedom. If we let countries or organizations take control of DNS servers, they will be able to easily blacklist places that are easily communicatable to other people in real world lingo, like Facebook.com, Twitter.com, Google.com. Without that DNS system in place, I have to tell Bruce, you have to go to, 14.82.232.18, which is not as easily to remember as podnuts.com.
Nope. In fact, it's funny that were it not for easy readable addresses, I'd be a lost man as it is. Although I'd be reduced to billboards again.
Yeah, and I will say there's one command in here I never heard of in this article, and it's the SS utility, which is the command for socket statistics, which is I know about NS lookup, I know about ping, I know about IP, I know about a lot of the commands because I've had my fair share of network issues that I've had to work through. I've never once heard of SS command. So this article at least opened my eyes to the existence of things that I didn't know of. And for all I know, this is the kind of command that if I did know of before, it might have made things easier to diagnose.
Now, since we're on the topic of network, refresh the listeners and my memory in regards to your setup, because I know that you're not just simply going from, whatever your current ISP router to your machine, because you have an intermediary in there somewhere, I believe.
Well, I'll say this. Currently in my network, I'm now double natted. I'm a firm believer that double natting increases my security a lot. I have my public facing IP address. Beyond that, I have my family network, which I let the kids go wild. I'm not monitoring them because my parents didn't monitor me. Then underneath that, I have my private network where I have all my internal stuff. Now, on the outside, I do have things port forwarded coming completely inside my network, whether it be Nextcloud or other types of services that I self-host inside my network. With them, it's very particular logging going on each one of those endpoints that make sure that there's not IP addresses coming in from Russia. There's not IP addresses coming in from Russia. There's not IP addresses coming in from India. There's not IP addresses coming in from Poland. Because thanks to Linux, I have a simple utility called fail to ban. And I have IP firewall where I can really easily, even for a mental invalid like myself, say, if you're coming from these IP addresses, which are geolocated outside of where I'm comfortable with, you are completely denied access to everything that I host.
So actually, I'm curious, maybe for a future show, do you want to walk us through how you set that up?
I can, but it's really, I'll say it like this. There's no work involved. whenever you're dealing with command line type utilities, it's literally just opening up a config file and just copying and pasting in like best what is the normal, in air quotes, smart thing to do security wise speaking. And I've openly complained to Windows administrators at the fact that they do not have fail to ban in place on any Microsoft properties, to where you can open up Office 365 accounts and you can literally 30,000 times a second try to access a specific domain assigned to that Office 365 account, and there's nothing you can do in Office 365 to say only allow access to my domain from within these IP ranges. In Linux, this is the kind of thing that we've had literally for 20 years.
Oh, no doubt about it. One of the interesting things, one of the big things now in technology is artificial intelligence. And at the place I work, we're actually using something called Logic Monitor. And so when I saw that, it's impressive software, no doubt about it, as is any AI software, to tell you the truth. I was looking for some AI technology that you can use at home, and I was surprised to find that there are actually 5 companies that do offer a home version of some of their products. Darktrace was one of them, and actually I saw them at the Boston Security Festival last summer, in fact, and I was so impressed by that product, because bottom line is that, like anything else, you let it run for a couple of days on your machine, it draws a baseline of what the network traffic looks like. It keeps you aware of the large packets coming in, large coming out, and so forth. The bottom line is that this was so successful that they actually managed to find a 0-day without it actually being on the official 0-day list. So there's some hope for this, and also it means that we can get rid of antivirus software someday.
Well, I'll say Intel proved, I want to say, honestly, Bruce, it was now almost 15 years ago. Intel proved a while ago that if you have a dedicated thing between the bus of the hard drive and the hard drive controller, and it did not heuristic, but it did a certain amount of algorithmic determination in the zeros and ones that came over, they could guarantee that no malicious code could be sent over that bus. So it's almost like, I hate saying it like this. Okay, I am going to say it like this. All that needs to happen is enough people to deem it being necessary, and the idea of viruses could essentially be kiboshed. Once there's enough attention, enough money, enough testicular fortitude pushed towards such a thing, it can be easily eradicated. Then we have to worry about stuff like ransomware, and then we're going to, even if we defeat ransomware tomorrow, we're always going to have unwantedware that is really balancing really on the edge of useful or abusive, and it's really, it's hard to decipher which is which. I will say ransomware is the kind of thing that now they've gotten so intelligent about, aka the bad guys, that everyone is more interested in propositioning how to deal with it once you get infected, and not how to just completely stop it outright.
Well, I think that a good backup system is one of the few things that actually can help defeat such a thing. You look a little hesitant there on that comment.
Yeah, not in the last 30 days. In fact, the issue has not became if you're able to recover from a backup, but the issue now is becoming, before we encrypt your data, we're sending it to us. And if you don't give us money, we're going to spew that data publicly. There's been at least 2 schools and 2 government organizations in the last 30 days who were told, if you don't give us money, we're going to relinquish this data on the public internet. And at least one of the places was a medical health type organization to where they could not let that happen, so they had to pay. So while everything is evolving, and if you don't believe in evolution, please don't talk to me. Change is inevitable. Change is always happening. Not only that, ransomware is evolving to maximize how much money they can get. And now they're not only encrypting your data, but they're uploading it to them first and then threatening to release that data publicly.
Now, that's actually an aspect that I didn't realize, because I know that up until this point, most of what was happening was the encryption was happening on the host site. So the fact that they're uploading it, well, that's a new dimension for us. We actually ran into a situation like that last year. A bunch of folders actually ended up with the extension of .crypt, and we quickly found the offending machine and went with it from there. All right. Well, I guess that means more homework and finding other ways to defeat such a thing.
Well, and I'm going to paraphrase Stephen J. Von Nichols. We're going to go back to Stephen J. Von Nichols again. And what he kind of said in that article was something to the effect of security is not a physical, tangible thing that you can digest. Security is a set of processes that you have to understand. Okay, because of the realistic thing with security is it doesn't matter if you have 2FA. It doesn't matter if you run Linux. It doesn't matter if you're up to TLS 1.3. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is what is your weakest link. Every exploit always takes advantage of your weakest link. So it's never about technology. It's not about numbers. It's not about stats. It's not about software things. It's about your entire process constantly being evaluated and monitored and adjusted to make sure that your processes are up to the complete top of the line snuff. Now, it also doesn't matter how good of a lock I have on my door, how good of an alarm system I have in my house. If someone truly wants to get into my house, it's near impossible for me to stop them. As far as security is done, it's near impossible to stop somebody from getting inside your network. But I will say this, Google has put enterprise-wide, every employee has what's essentially called a Google Titan. What it is, it's a two-factor hardware device that periodically asks you for a challenge response. I have a basic version of a Google Titan, which is not. It's a YubiKey. Since Google has implemented Google Titan, they've had 0 successful exploits onto their network, and that's been more than 2 years now. So ultimate absolute security is not impossible, but it requires a hell of a lot of work, a hell of a lot of education to every user on your network, and it takes never stopping diligence to be on top of things.
Wow, you have a white YubiKey. I have a black one.
Well, as soon as I get another phone that supports NFC, I'm going to upgrade my YubiKey, because right now this YubiKey is easily 6 years old, but it lets me have a 63-character password for my 9-to-5 job, to which no one can comprehend. I have that long of a password, and I complained to them that their two-factor authentication is actually incredibly incompetently weak, because it almost insists that you use a phone number, a mobile phone number, and SIM jacking is uncommonly easy in 2020. And I really wish that they wouldn't force me to partake in such a thing.
Oh, no doubt about it. Well, going back to your point too, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and that also includes the password, because if your password is password, well, surprise.
Yeah, and speaking about security again, the United States, what's it called? NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, earlier this year insisted a couple of things needed to change right now. Now, they said that it's going to take 2 to 3 years for companies to catch up because that's the way it always is. But NIST said we should not force you to change your password on a specific time frame. Number one. Number two, we should not force you to have lowercase, uppercase numbers and special characters. Number three, we should not record the last 10 passwords you did, because the combination of those three things forced users to use incredibly incompetent passwords over and over again and use the password whatever followed by 1, and then followed by 2, and then followed by 3, and then followed by 4, because it encouraged people to use easy, simple to remember passwords because we kept forcing them to change them at every X number of days. Now, what really needs to happen is passwords need to go away. But between now and then, what we need to do is we need to focus on forcing people to change passwords when significant things change in your network. The example I'll use is if a domain administrator in your enterprise gets fired or relinquish of duties or quit, the very next day, every single domain administrator in that network and every service user account that that guy could have had access to needs to be changed then and there. It's more of a reactionary based system, which might be cumbersome for some places to actually keep up with, but in this realm of security, it makes 10 times more sense.
Well, and it's interesting for something like that because in an enterprise level, most of the accounts are AD or Active Directory driven. And ideally, what should happen is that when your role is terminated, the moment it's terminated, your AD object should be put into a deprovisioned OU. And interestingly enough, in its concept, it's simple enough. In practice, it is fraught with peril because sometimes it just doesn't make it over there. There's a brilliant story of a man who found out he was going to be fired, but before the HR could fire him, he locked himself in the office and then proceeded to log in with his administrator account and blow things away. He did about $5 million worth of damage to this company before they finally got to him. You know, again, it's they still haven't mastered that. And believe it or not, I think that's actually part of the problem too. HR, but that's for another time because if you want a weak link, the Office of Human Resources almost inevitably is your weakest link.
Yeah, one of my old bosses said human resources is filled with people who got liberal arts degrees, to which was an insult as far as he was concerned, because that meant they did not specify any one thing that they were good at, and they just said, let me just go for the blanket overall. Here's a perfect example of why you cannot trust domain administrators. I put the link to Bruce, and I put the links in the YouTube, and the link I'll try to make sure it's in the notes. It's from Bleeping Computer, and it is a Cisco engineer resigns and then nukes 16,000 WebEx accounts and 456 virtual machines in their infrastructure. The last thing you want to do as an executive, as a person who walks in to your job with a suit and tie and communicates with people and marketing and HR and shipping and handling and not the technical side, you don't want to really make the domain administrators mad, because when you do, this is the kind of thing that happens. This is going to be a definite black eye. Sorry, maybe that's a racist term. We didn't figure out a new term for it, but for now, I'm going to call it black eye on Cisco as a company. Hopefully, WebEx as a product will die because of this, because it is horrible. It is a piece of crap, and I love whenever I hear Cisco and bad news.
Well, you're in luck because I think Aruba Networks is taking what Cisco doesn't want anymore. And it's kind of like the post office back in the 70s when they decided they no longer wanted packages. So UPS was born, and look at them today. Yeah. So anyway, well, I guess we can sort of segue into the have I been pwned code base going open source? Because that's actually an intriguing site. I go to it every once in a while because I put in old email addresses to find out they had long been hacked. Of course, I have nothing to do with those accounts anymore, but somebody does. So it's a fun site, fun/secure site. I'd check it out.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about have I been pwned, because you have to provide them information in order for them to tell you what's going on with your account, and I'm not a fan of that. But Firefox also has a built-in service, and I'll say it like this: here's another reason to use Firefox. They have a built-in service called Firefox Monitor, which I believe does the exact same thing as Have I Been Pwned, to where it will let you know if your username credentials are appearing on aka dark websites where bad things are happening, is the way that I'll put it. The Have I Been Pwned guy, I will tell you, he basically quit his job because this became so popular, but then it becomes so hard of a task to maintain, he has to relinquish it to everyone else and say, you guys got to take care of this. Either he developed a drinking habit, a female habit, or an entertainment habit, but he decided, I can't do this anymore. Which I completely understand, because this is the kind of thing that it's good for it to be out there, but it's bad that it needs to be out there. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Sort of a side road to that. You know who Yo-Yo Ma is?
Oh, yeah.
The famous cellist. So anyway, apparently he works with Harvard University, and they created a project, and incredibly, it's named Silk Road. So if you happen to be in Cambridge and you go by Harvard Stadium, you will see a building that's labeled Silk Road. And oh, it's fantastic because they clearly don't follow internet at all, internet security. And anyway, I just thought that was a fun thing to do next time you're in Cambridge, Mass.
I'll be right back, Bruce.
Absolutely.
Sorry about that.
Nope, that's all right. So we've already discussed the aspect of, okay, so my data has been compromised. Now what do we do? So you have two links that actually address sort of that. So there's the relax and recover, and how to create an incremental backup using Rsync on Linux. Which one do you want to address first?
Well, I'll first tangentially just say the name PC Backup. PC Backup is a tool I learned about from Mark Cockrell, who used to be host of Everyday Linux. I think I just said that wrong. I'm really sorry. It was maybe the most verbose backup software that was completely clientless. You literally loaded it on a server, and then at the server end, you would point to Samba Share, FSFs, directories, FTP directories, SFTP directories, or any kind of open medium to where they could connect, and then it would take care of doing all the backups. I still haven't found anything to beat that software, period. Hard stop. But I love the fact these other things are coming to fruition. The first I'm going to talk about is relax and recover. I'll put it like this. It is a very bare bones, command line driven backup software where you basically have the ability to point it to a device on the drive and say, create a ISO of that drive. So it's literally like bare metal. You can back up entire computers, granted only Linux based, with this one command, and it literally takes the entirety of the hard drive and it does one thing called QSing. QSing is big in the backup world. What QSing is, it's the ability to take an operating system and tell it to gingerly slow down processes. So even if you're in the middle of transactional database exchanges, even if you're in the middle of file copying, rewriting, overwriting process, QSing says, now let's slow down everything. And then when you're at a spot you can stop, let me know. And then when you stop, I'm going to quickly take a snapshot, and then you can slowly build your speed back up and take everything. So to the other parts of the operating system, it just appears like processes are going slow. But when you QS, you're enabling backups to be taken, even if normal backup software will think your files are locked. So that's one of the things that this relax and recover does, is completely command line driven. Right on their main website, they have literally like a 4-minute video with no audio or no voice or anything, just showing you how the process is. And I will say it like this: if you're running Linux systems and Linux servers, this seems to me that it seems to be fantastic at doing bare metal complete drive backup. The other one was at linuxconfig.org, and the main reason I bookmarked this one, Bruce, because I never heard of linuxconfig.org. But I was really impressed at the depth and the breadth of how this step-by-step went through. I swear by the format of the pages, I have seen this site before, but it doesn't like ring a bell. The long and the short of it is, you take full backups, hypothetically once a week or once a month, however you determine. And then in the meantime, you take incremental backups. Incremental backups are just differentials. So you can say, I have backup A and backup B. Well, in the meantime, what are the differences between that? And let me back those little differences up. And Rsync, I will tell you right now, if you want to get paid tomorrow $80,000 a year being a Linux backup administrator, all you got to know is Rsync, and you can do anything and everything that any multi-million-dollar piece of software can do. You might have to figure out how to put it in a bash script or something, but this is the tool that enables backups for anything and everything in every possible way, in any possible way, with a simple set of scripts.
Nicely done. Again, I play without a net, but at some point, I'm sure I'll probably want to start looking at some of these things. I think a lot of it is just due to, we've discussed this ad nauseum, but I mean, over the years, I've just made sure that the very important stuff are saved elsewhere. My machine could die on me right now, and there's nothing that I've lost that I care about. So, but in those cases, I'm in the minority. Folks have literally years and years of pictures they want preserved. These would be great tools to use.
Yeah, I want my pictures to be deleted forever. And I will assure anybody out there, if you were able to look at your enterprise backup solution, or even a tool like Dropbox, okay, if you're able to actually see the source code that's being deployed, I will guarantee you my reproductive organs that Rsync is in those things, because it is an old Unix-based command line application that decided, I'm going to do one thing, and I'm going to do it better than anyone has ever imagined it could be. Thus, now with Rsync, you have tools like grsync, to where if you want to graphically click buttons and click options and then get a command line out of how it would look, Rsync is the backbone of incredible solutions. I guarantee you, whether it's OwnCloud, Nextcloud, Dropbox, OneDrive, or anything else, if they work and they work well, they're using Rsync.
Now, here's a question for you, and it's actually tied into this in a roundabout way, but what is your understanding of the very definition of LDAP?
Well, Ldap, I'll say first and foremost, was a technology that was acquired from Unix to Windows, where it was a very low powered database solution for users, credentials, and default parameters of permissions.
Right. My understanding was, what is it? Lightweight directory, whatever. But anyway, the reason why I bring that up is because I don't think it was ever meant for an enterprise level use. Or if it was, it would be a very small. I mean, I think that if you're putting in, a couple 100,000 entries, you're overtaxing it. So circling back, one of the problems that I noticed when we talk about backup solutions like Code 42, oddly enough, you would think that an AD account is what's used here. Incredibly, no, LDAP accounts. And that's shocking because it's a little bit different, and not everybody has one out of the box. So that's a growing pain for anybody who ever encounters such a thing. So just a heads up.
Yeah, looking on Wikipedia, LDAP stands for Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. Now, Access Protocol is a very nice way of saying security profiles, is the way I'll put it. I will say identity management is the greater term in 2020. No company has this figured out. Identity management is an incredibly difficult thing to do, an incredibly hard thing to have completely secure and completely accessible to tens of thousands of users. Okay. Red Hat believes they have the answer. Red Hat believes they have systems that can handle easily like 50 million users at a time. Microsoft LDAP cannot handle, I want to say it was more than 50,000. Once you get above a certain number with LDAP in the Microsoft ecosystem, everything just dies and goes to a crawl because it cannot handle it, because it's supposed to be a lightweight directory access protocol, not a world binding directory access protocol.
You're absolutely correct. Once it hits 50,000, then the day gets long. And I believe that's why Active Directory was ultimately created, because it was supposed to handle larger volumes of data. And it's interesting, your comment could not be more accurate. Companies do not know how to handle customer or actually employee data. Onboarding, offboarding is still a challenge for a lot of places today, and nobody does it consistently across the board. And it's amazing how different it is from company to company. And, again, I digress, but again, you're correct. We'll move forward.
Yeah, I mean, and I want to say, here's the thing I want to die a like horrible, destructive, violent death is LDAP, because LDAP is intrinsically designed with passwords in mind. Passwords were literally designed in like the 60s. In the 60s, I'm older than that. And I'm old. I got gray hair. I'm balding. I like need to be. They want to give me a colonoscopy. I'm so old. We need to get past passwords. We need to get past passwords. And once we do get past passwords, then we can start to say, now we can look at alternate systems in place to handle identity management, because it's all about trust, it's all about security, and it's all about ownership. Those are three things that a lot of companies out there think they understand, think they believe. I don't think they do, and I don't think anybody has the answer yet, but I will jubilantly enjoy when somebody figures that kind of stuff out.
Well, again, I had a point and I lost it because, as you know, I'm old. But actually, there's a concept out there called zero trust, and that actually is supposed to replace passwords at some point. I actually became familiar with the phrase about 6 months ago. So there's more to follow up with on this. So for future shows, we'll definitely be following up on it.
Yeah, I paraphrase Steve Gibson. I believe he's right about more than a couple things. I believe he's completely deluded and polluted and wrong about a lot of other things. There is the default thing where it doesn't matter what you give the user an option to, whatever the default is, a huge percentage of them will just do that. And he calls that the tyranny of the default. And he's right. He also has the TNO, trust no one, which I do believe is the correct security model. But perspective is everything. Not only should you, as a user, trust nobody, the who is ever providing you the source also needs complete transparency. If they don't have complete transparency, then you cannot even begin to trust them. Only with complete transparency can services actually start to begin to be trusted by me. He also has been working on a secure, quick, reliable login solution, and I'm really surprised I was able to just mention that off the top of my head. Squirrel. Secure, quick, reliable login, where it is a password-less system where the server or service asking us to log in has zero amount of sensitive information. It's hard to comprehend, is the way I'll put it. But you create a login hypothetically on podnuts.com, and even if podnuts.com gets completely exploited and every bit of information on that domain gets taken by somebody, none of your, as a user, personal identifiable information, nor will they even get your password that can log into the system. There's been 2 attempts that I know of by companies to do similar type solutions. The only question is kind of like the iPod. There was a lot of devices before the iPod that were solid state music driven devices, kind of like the Creative Labs Rio. It was like 4 years before the iPod, but it wasn't successful. So the question is which is going to be the first passwordless solution that is successful? And if I knew that, I would be a billionaire because I would invest in them, but I don't know.
No, and neither do I. So maybe we'll have a little bit more clarification that in the upcoming weeks. But yeah, I mean, this is actually one of the things that still plagues a lot of companies. So if you're looking for inroads to making a lot of money as a consultant, this is certainly one of them.
Yeah, and I hate to say it like this, Bruce. A lot of the things, and I'm saying this really slow because it takes me a while to really digest all my words and say them correctly. I really, really, in my heart of heart, wish I love my wife, I love my kids, I love my friends, I love my cohorts, I love everything that I'm able to experience thanks to everybody in Podnuts and everything else. But even with that stated, I wish I was 17 years old again. Right now in 2020, because the knowledge and information available to anyone today on the public internet is the most that's ever been awarded to anybody in the history of the universe, as far as we know it. Even a company like Google, literally, and I'm gonna try to make sure this is in the notes too. Google released a Coursera course, but also they just relinquished and said, we're going to introduce a new career certificate program that could lead you to a great new job. Basically, they're going to offer completely free, tuition-free courses on things like project management, things like security, things like how to program, how to develop software as a service kind of thing. And if anything can actually come to the fruition of challenging how the United States educational system is done, I'm all for it, because here's the truth. We are doing education almost like it was done in like the 1930s. There isn't really a lot that's changed. So I'm all in favor of forcing systems to evolve and be better.
Well, you triggered me when you said the words project manager. I need to understand why Why places hire project managers with no technological background whatsoever? That just drives me nuts. We had a couple of folks on a project management team that were migrating folks from Windows 7 to Windows 10, and their lack of knowledge, even in the most basic forms, drove me nuts. That's why I have no hair. I pulled it all out and answering their questions. But anyway, going back to Google, it's funny you mentioned Coursera because looking through the coursework for security, I went to the Google site because a YouTuber had mentioned they had taken a business management certificate course through them. And that's a great offering, especially for some of my younger cohorts, because I know that they're new to the workforce and they're looking for ways to get ahead. And this does it for almost no money whatsoever. So it's great that they offer this. The funny thing about it is that it was I was following this one woman who had showed how to get your A+ certificate in 2 weeks, and then a year later, she puts a video up called "Burnout." She apparently left the company after getting the job she had always wanted all her life. So, anyway, that leads to another question: what is your passion? We'll move on.
Yeah, and I'll say Coursera is a I don't know what the right word is. It's a cooperative between Illinois University, Duke University, University of Michigan, Stanford University, Penn University, I believe, IBM, and Google, offering basically education at near zero cost. Some things cost money. 90% of the time to take the course is free. To take the test to say you're certified costs money, but there's a lot of free content out there. And I am fully in favor of like more places offering free education. And I go to Coursera.org and I'm literally prompted with "Thank you for visiting. Do you have 5 minutes to answer a few survey questions about how you heard about Coursera?" And I'll just put it like this, Bruce. In the last week, I've taken more surveys maybe than I've ever taken in my life because I am I get weird YouTube type surveys that when I share them with people who I know have no idea what they are, they've never seen them before. I've got weird Microsoft surveys posted to me as well, but also Gallup poll. I don't know if you're aware of Gallup poll.
Oh, absolutely. So make sure you answer those questions right.
Well, Gallup poll now for 2 years have been paying me money when I complete surveys, because typically their surveys are like 15 to 30 minutes long, very in depth, very like, and they always ask certain questions multiple times to see if you answer them differently, which, you know, I see that from a mile away. I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to see if I'm just clicking to just get money. Well, I'm not. I'm actually clicking to try to provide good information. And I literally, like, Google Play Music is going away, going over to YouTube Music, and I won't transfer my account over. So they finally sent me a survey. It was a half an hour long survey where like 3 times they tried to trick me into clicking the button to say, okay, transfer my information over to YouTube Music, and I won't. When the time comes and they kill my account, fine. I have all my music, 29 plus days worth of audio, uploaded to my Plex server. I'll just use that for all my audio needs.
Now that's interesting. You use a Plex server because I was debating that. I need a platform to put all my music up because over the years, I mean, I've amassed quite a large collection, and I might actually ask you a little bit more about that down the road.
Well, the truth is, Plex is getting attention in the wrong way. There's been a couple legislators who, before the COVID thing, insisted to a couple congressmen that you need to take a look at Plex and what they're doing to protect property rights holders, which to me said Plex is going to die. It's just a question of how long. Because once the government takes a look at it and sees that you're able to share copyrightable information with others, well, they're going to put a stop to it. If you just want to use it for yourself, for your own personal use, I think Plex will still be a viable solution for 3 to 5 years, I'll say, from now. The other solution I'll throw out there is called Streama, Streama. You just look at that, you'll get to a GitHub link where you can get a similar Plex-like experience, not as polished as Plex. With audio, you can easily create channels, playlists. Automatic playlists are generated from like the recently added, the most thumbs up, the most you listen to kind of thing. So it's really easy to have content that you enjoy after you put a little bit of work in, listen to stuff, thumbs up stuff, add to playlist.
I just thought of something. You know what? I have a Raspberry Pi that's been sitting off to the side waiting to be used. Oh my God, I could put Vortex on it and call it a day.
Perfect use case, yep.
Ah, nice. See, you come here for solutions. That's what we are.
Yeah, kind of like Bill and Ted's New Bogus Journey or whatever.
Well, I was thinking more along the lines of we're the Winston Wolf of YouTube.
Yeah. All right, Bruce, do you have any other things you want to bring to the show, or?
Dora, the fact that you've mentioned Coursera, I'm actually on the site now, going through it. So it does say enroll for free because it starts August 29th. So 300,000 folks have already enrolled. Holy cow!
Yeah, and I hate to say it like this, I'm okay with a corporation doing this because government institutions, universities need to be challenged on all levels. And if it takes a Google or an IBM or an Apple or a Oracle or a Unix to do it, well, then so be it.
Oh, I completely agree. In fact, even though it's sort of cutting off my nose to spite my face here, or biting the hand that feeds me, I think that we're at a point where college institutions absolutely need to be challenged given the costs that they charge every year. You sent me a what is it, a little GIF not too long ago talking about the prices of streaming services, and it started off with like Roku, and then it ultimately ended with Harvard University charging $52,000 a month. That's not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, on the bright side, they should always have enough money to pay guys like you. There's no doubt about that. And I will say edX, EDX, and Coursera are the two sites I implore anybody. Okay. If you're in a time of distress, AKA you just got laid off, you just got terminated, you don't know what to do, you feel like you're disenchanted with what you're doing as a living, those two sites, edX and Coursera, I guarantee you this. You spend 4 to 5 hours a day for 60 days on those two sites. I guarantee you can get a job paying over $100,000 a year, whether you live in Mobile, Alabama, or you live in New York City, like Brooklyn. Information is there. The only question is, do you have the desire to follow through, learn, digest, and then proactively push yourself to doing better, getting better? Because I can tell you right now, if my livelihood was in danger, if I had bill collectors at my door threatening me that this house was going to be taken away from me, I can guarantee you this: 1, Podnut shows would slow down, but 2, I would have a job, and I would have a job in maybe 60 to 90 days that would definitely cover the differential in whatever harmful monetary thing happened, because it's all available out there on the internet, and I got 300 up, 300 down speed, so I can digest it.
Well, more importantly, certificates on edX, I think, start at $49. So again, that's more than reasonable, even if you were to lose your job. I mean, you can come up with $50 one way or the other.
Yeah, and I'll say, even if you do something, and I love saying do, if you do something on edX or Coursera and it is completely free and you are successful and you do get a job, I really do encourage you to stop what you're doing and try to figure out a way to give them money, because they helped make you money. And I'll say it like this again. Any podcast you're listening to that doesn't constantly interrupt you with ads, you should find a way to support them one way or another. There was literally a study, Bruce, I'll try to make sure it's in the notes, from 1983 to 2018. Okay. It was a long study with over 900,000 people in that study in the EU. And what they determined was it was true that too many ads versus content caused, and they said, unhappiness, not depression, because they weren't clickbaity. And this was from the Harvard Business Review, where they said too many ads cause unhappiness. Podnuts does not want to add to your unhappiness. So thank you to Bruce. Thank you for the supporters. Thank you for Jonathan. Thank you for Cody Cooper. Thank you for Steve Cherubino. Thank you for everybody who's ever supported this show in the past, Bruce. I guess we're going to talk again in about 2 weeks.
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully intern Jonathan will find his way back.
Yeah, I will say this again. I did have at least two people complain about Jonathan's audio. Don't complain about Jonathan's audio. Blame me. Because before we started the show, Jonathan said, "How do I sound?" I said, "You sound pretty bad, but let's go with it."
Well, yeah, we'll work on that.
It was only because I was so happy to hear from him. Okay. So when I hear from him the next time, we'll be able to get things a little bit tighter, a little bit smoother, a little bit better. But until then, I will say, I thank everyone again for their support. I thank everyone for coming out. I thank everyone who listens live. There are actually people who listen live. And I want to say again, if you do not have Root in 2020, let me assure you right now, you do not know who does. Take it easy, everybody. I'll talk to you again real soon. And we are still streaming. I love Jonathan. I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, actually, like I said, I should have some time tomorrow. I'll give him a shout, see what's going on. Actually, it's funny you mentioned, your outgoing phrase, because I actually, somewhere in that article with Von Nichols, he essentially says something similar as well, and the article was great because it basically said that, administrators with a clue aren't going to be susceptible to the issues that have come up.
Oh, yeah. I sat in a meeting, and we are still streaming live. I sat in on a meeting 2 weeks ago with software developers who I would call junior, is what I would say. And I explained to them, we're going to implement a password reset system. Okay. A self-service password reset system, but we have to do these things because we're not going to get DDoSed. We're not going to get pwned. We cannot relinquish metadata openly and freely to where other people can attack us, because I will not be the reason we're on the nightly news. Because if we're on the nightly news, it's going to be because no one's listened to what I did, because I'm not getting fired over this. And they didn't understand me. And I said, look, how many public facing logins to our enterprise do you know of? And they all said, well, none. No, duh. I'm responsible for the only ones that are. And we haven't been breached yet, and we're not going to be breached because of you guys. So we're going to maintain these certain standards. First off, I insisted they all sit through WASP, what's it called? The WASP 10 training, where they go over SQL injection, cross-site scripting, Oh man, I can't remember any other ones. But yeah, I forced them to sit through an hour video explaining all of them, and I said, "Look, these are the things we have to protect against because I'm not going to be on the nightly news, and the code I have running is literally classic ASP code from like 2002 that protects against all OWASP traps."
Wow, outstanding.
Well, and I tried to explain to them, it isn't the code base you code in is irrelevant. It's what you do in the code base which is important. Now, if you want to jump from classic ASP to your C#, whatever, you're going to need to maintain these standards or else.
You know, it's interestingly enough, it's one of those things that I found interesting. So OWASP has their conference every October here. It's free. It's free. And you know who I don't see at these things? My coworkers. You know, these
Not
are
shocked at all.
No, and these are people that need to be there because they are developers. I'm not, you know, and another group of people I don't see there, IT security people.
Yep.
I've never seen them at any of the conferences.
Give me 1 second, Bruce.
Yep.
Yeah, in one of the last DDGs, I want to say it was the last one, I brought up a study. It was a small study, like less than 300 people, but I believe it was 100% accurate. And it was 96% of developers say security encumbers on efficiency.
Well, so one of the things I thought was interesting is that the last OWASP one that I went to, it was a brilliant talk by who are those folks that clean up things after they're the company in yellow, Service Master.
They basically clean up after homicides and murders.
Yeah, Service Master, I think it is.
I can't remember the name of them, but I know 2 people that work for them.
Yeah, so anyway, the guy who works in their IT department talked about how they use Agile. And he talked about the security team. And he goes, the best part about this is that our security team works with us because they've been given the not necessarily the mandate, but they've been told, assist, don't obstruct. Goes, the only time you go in there and tell them it's a no-go is if it is absolutely a showstopper. But if it's something that can go another 6 weeks without being addressed, then put it in the next scrum or the next sprint and they'll address it. And, you know, it made logical sense. And the funny thing is that we have sprints in our group. And again, you know who's not involved? IT security. We were just told last week that we need to have, Cloudflare installed on our VMs. And so I went to, the director of our group and I said, hey, if it's not too intrusive, do you mind if I sit in? Because I absolutely want to see how you guys do this, because it would show me how we get into AWS and what we're doing to secure. He goes, you're not really going to learn anything. I go, oh, no, absolutely. I'll learn something. He goes, no, you're not. All we need to do is just putting the application on there.
Yeah.
Not installing it. Just put it on there.
Right. A stub.
That's That's outstanding. That's outstanding. So F security, I guess.
Yeah, well, oh man, I hate to say it like this, but OWASP has the best of intentions. It has some of the best intentions I've seen out of any independent organization in security in a long time. But things like PCI exist for a reason, to where all they want to do is just show that they've done, in air quotes, a best effort. We've tried to do our job. Not that we did a good job, not that security is actually done, but we just want to show. We just want to log in the event viewer that we actually tried to do security.
That's even worse than the kid with his finger in the dike.
Well, and that's what I see when I look at enterprises. They just want to, like, CYA, cover their own butt and show to the executives that they tried their best.
Wow. It's one of those where the response is, you tried your best, but your best wasn't good enough.
Right. It's about as incompetent as someone saying, hold my beer.
Wow. I have to tell you, sometimes it's amazing, the place that I work at. I've seen some things.
I cannot believe my place of employment has not been hacked and on the nightly news. Because some of the incompetence I witness on a daily thing, it's like, how do you find your way to work every day, much less sit down at a computer and actually do anything productive?
I will find the video. We got hacked a little while ago, and it happened in under 11 minutes. I'll have to get the video, because it was actually a presentation at Boston University. And basically, what had happened is that the person in charge of security said he woke up in the morning, took a shower, and in the time it took a shower till he got out, the person hacking in had DOM access. So,
damn.
Yeah, let me get the. I know the talk has to.